different and helpful guidelines to help kickstart your AI journey. So I already heard, Linda, you started the recording. So we are recording the session. So if you don't want to be seen on the recording, you can turn off your camera. And we will look that the first part of where you were not yet informed will be taken out of the recording. So before I introduce the speakers, I'd like to shortly tell you about Digital Switzerland. So Digital Switzerland is the independent voice of digitalization, with the goal to transform Switzerland into the leading digital nation. We are an umbrella organization that is driven by business and science that also includes other stakeholders such as the society as well as the public sector to discuss and find solutions to trustworthy digital ecosystems in the age of AI. So in our portfolio, we focus on the key elements of trust in order to use digital opportunities as well as the Swiss eID. And the main focus areas are literacy. Then we have infrastructure, where the AI ecosystem collaboration is also part of it. And then, of course, we also have education, where we focus on helping to mitigate skills shortage. So if you have any further questions on our portfolio, don't hesitate to reach out to Linda or me. And now I
No offense, no
would like
offense.
to welcome our speakers and panelists of today. We will first listen to 3 short presentations from our speakers. Each of them will be around 5 minutes, and we'll then open up to the discussion and also give you, the audience, the possibility to ask questions. So feel free to ask your questions in the chat at any time during this hour, and we will make sure that they will be answered. Sorry. With us today, we have Primo Amrain. He's the AI National Skills Director at Microsoft Philanthropies. Then we have Manuel Kugler. He's Data and AI Program Manager at SATW. And Antoine Verdun as the third panelist, the Managing Director at AI Bridge. So here I'd like to hand over to you, Primo, and I'm sharing the screen for you, so just let me know when to go to the next slide. Floor is yours.
Perfect. Perfect. Thanks a lot, Cecil. Thanks a lot, Linda and Digital Switzerland. I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here. Just very quickly on this role specifically, before I come here, some of you might have seen that a week ago we announced together with the Federal Council Parmalat a large investment into Switzerland. So $400 million, roughly 330 million Swiss francs investment into AI in Switzerland, to a large degree around our data centers and local AI capabilities, and also with regard to skilling. And I have the huge pleasure to lead that initiative in order to reach as many Swiss as possible when it comes to AI skilling, because we are fundamentally convinced AI is not only going to change a lot in our not only economy but society, but also that we need to reach like the broad society. It makes no sense if there's only just a few companies looking into it. It really needs to actually be very broad in order as a nation, as an economy, to really have the biggest benefits out of it. And that is my role, which I fulfill. I'm in this role since last September. Before a couple of years, I was also leading the cloud initiative in Switzerland. So if we go to the next slide, and as Cecil mentioned, this is going to be very short input on purpose, because we have time for discussion and also Q&A later. If we start a bit from the broader context about AI transformation, I quickly would like to make you aware about some of the opportunities that we see also for SMEs. Those are some of the patterns of AI opportunities that we see out of customer projects, where often it starts with like an internal focus. How could we so-called enrich employee experiences? For example, to find information faster, to save time by actually giving the right information at the fingertip, to also have a higher productivity by, for example, making sure that the right information is available and that also teams can actually collaborate in a much more efficient way. Then when it comes also to customer engagements, we do see patterns there. When it comes, for example, to contact centers, companies that are even SMEs internationally operational, and that they can actually make a better customer-centered experience, especially if there's consumer customers as well, by giving higher effectivity to the customer center, by not being dependent on like people sitting on a desk for the customer center operations, but actually also giving access to information while it's night in Switzerland, or also during peak times, that the system which is trained on the right information sources internally can give also automatically and automatically some information about customer care. Then when it comes to business processes, we see that more and more companies are looking into AI when it comes to order management, for example, supplier management, simplifying and automating some of the processes there, especially AI agents will play a huge role there in the future, we believe. And last but not least, so-called bending the curve on innovation, especially based on data. Because whenever a company invests or looks into AI, very often it's then also the question about the underlying data. What data do we have and what could we do more with that data? And this is very often then the spark of innovation, where people start realizing what could be a business benefit and the potential out of such data and how to potentially even monetize it. Now, on the next slide, please, Cecile. What we see often is in these days where ChatGPT and other AI tools are very prevalent, we see very often bottom-up initiative. Many employees start thinking about where could we actually embed AI. And very often it's then a question about how can we actually properly classify and also prioritize such use cases. Even if you also have like a brainstorming in the company, there will be many potential ideas, but how can you potentially classify and prioritize that? And this is also something that we have seen very successfully being used by customers, is a very simple classification across business value and ease of implementation. So if you look to the business value on the y-axis or vertically, what are relatively, let's say, high business value use cases from 5 high to 1 low. And then on the other hand, the x-axis or horizontally, if you talk about the easy implementation, what are some potential use cases which are rather easy to implement, high on the right-hand side, and then which are more difficult to implement, low on the left-hand side. And there you easily see like quick wins, obviously, which have a higher business value and are easier to implement, versus like on the contrary use cases which probably do not make so much sense if there's not such a high business value and the more difficult implementation. You see there with the points also some of the items that could be looked at. But this is, of course, always depending on the company. This is just a guidance here, as we have seen many companies using this kind of factors within the different categories here. But of course, this is something that needs to be developed within the company. And that leads me to the arrow on the bottom right. It's very important to set such projects up very broadly right from the beginning, even in the ideation phase, that we have all the relevant internal departments and stakeholders together, because only then this will be successful, because it might have quite some large changes and consequences in the organization, depending on how far you go. Last but not least, on the next slide, I would like to introduce this SME guide that we have compiled with training resources. So just to set expectations, this is not the SME AI guide to tell you first you have to do this and this and that, but it's more a library of training resources. Because what we have seen is that there is an abundance of AI resources available, and very often it's like overwhelming. And I come from a SME family myself. And if I think about my father or my brother now, who is leading the SME, if they would like to start with AI, they would get like thrown away by all the different information resources. And so we asked a think tank to actually create content which is relatively easy to consume and categorize it in different sections. And if you go then and have a look at it, you will see that we touch on some different and important topics which we believe need to be looked at an SME. But again, relatively small information training sizes in order to make it manageable and at least get an easy start. There's further details if you go further down, but to give you an easy start, we suggest to have a look at that, because it refers then to many of these training resources as just mentioned. All right, that's it from my side. Thanks a lot, and handing over or back to Celine then, I guess.
Thank you very much, Primo, for this short insight of all the different initiatives that you are doing. I directly hand over to you, Manuel.
Thank you, Cecil, and thank you for the possibility also to briefly present our work on this topic. So AI and data is one of our priority programs at the Swiss Academy of Engineering Science, and we are aiming to support as well the responsible adoption of AI by various actors in Switzerland, mainly through fostering collaboration and knowledge sharing. And one of our activities dedicated to this is SIROP. This is, on the one hand, it's a joint initiative of numerous partner organizations, and on the other hand, it's also a web platform which provides similarly to the example that we just saw, an overview over various resources and the whole Swiss AI ecosystem we're trying to map there. And so in the following, I will refer to a practical guide for SMEs that was created by several partners of SIROP. Next slide, please. So starting point of this work was as well the perception that basically with the democratization of AI and data as well, SMEs can benefit heavily, but they often do need support on their journey to adopt AI. And so business owners may ask themselves, what can AI be used for? What are the relevant use cases, and with the fast developments, identifying suitable cases for their own businesses can be quite tricky and hard, particularly for non-experts. And second question as well, what are potential risks that may be associated with adopting AI, and also how to overcome them, how to address these challenges. And as a third one, what kind of tools may be available already. So we saw already this overview presented by the previous speakers. And so here as well, where can we find trustworthy experts and support to get started? Next slide, please. Exactly, first question would be then to about the use cases. So here in the practical guide, we described a number of examples that may be relevant and interesting for a large number of SMEs. We clustered them only along one dimension, so along the complexity scale, basically. And of course, this will depend on the specific boundary conditions and prerequisites of the individual company. But basically, it's clustered from fairly straightforward use cases like content creation or education with AI, and then going maybe a step further via image and video analysis or AI in software development, to the very right where it's more tricky. The prerequisites will be higher for example, process optimization to a large extent, or predictive maintenance, and kind of over the whole bandwidth is kind of use case of decision making of various kinds. As mentioned, this will mainly depend as well on the individual circumstances of the business. Next slide, please, is dedicated to the challenges. So basically, how can we address, or what is expected? What kind of hurdles and obstacles can SMEs expect? So they are not exclusively, but particularly true for SMEs. Of course, limited expertise and in-house expertise and budgets. So it's good idea to invest in literacy in one way or another. Another example, fears of employees. This should be addressed by transparent communication and clear guidance, clear rules. Another one, complexity and automation bias. So it's important basically to know the limits of the technologies, because that is not, they are not flawless and never will be. So it's important to carefully define the use cases. Lack of data, obviously also a challenge, depending on the use case. So here, if you haven't done so, invest in data quality and catch up if you haven't done so far. And stereotypes in AI and regulatory requirements. So here, mainly awareness is important, and also further education. So ideally with partners who already have experience, which brings me to the last slide. Basically, how to find existing support and potential partners. Here again, the reference to CIROP. Up to now, we had a focus on mainly research institutions, which we now also, in context of this guide, expanded to generally important AI actors in Switzerland. So the idea of the platform is as well to facilitate basically the matchmaking for SMEs to find potential partners, be it from research or academia, as well as service providers. And so basically we grouped different categories of services that may be interesting. On the one hand, more general topics like knowledge sharing and expert groups for networking, coaching and consulting, further education, and so on. Basically, we're trying to make it easier to identify suitable partners and offers of the different actors in Switzerland. Maybe just a short outlook. Next steps, we will continue the article to more dedicated use cases. We will elaborate on these and important prerequisites, and also plan to organize dedicated events to facilitate this matchmaking. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Manuel. And it's also great to hear that there's already a lot of follow-up projects in the pipeline regarding the matchmaking. So I hand over to Antoine, the last speaker, before we start our panel discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cécile. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Antoine. I'm a managing partner at AI Bridge. We are a company helping organizations implement AI. We were founded 5 years ago by Afke Schouten. She's a mathematician, one of the pioneers of AI in Switzerland. She spent more than 15 years in AI, and she put all her knowledge in the form of a methodology that she teaches currently at a Swiss university to help managers, companies develop AI projects in a way that leads to success. That's what she called AI management. And we get a lot approached by SMEs about where to start, because I think, like, even though many SMEs have implemented some first tests around AI over the last years, I think now with generative AI, there's like a whole new field opening, and beyond the first test and beyond the first outlooks, then many are still wondering how can generative AI create value. And if you go to the next slide, we realize that for many SMEs, the journey is practically the same. They start by becoming aware of the potential of AI for their company, and also the fact that many people in their company are actually already using AI. There's a big shadow AI use in almost all companies, where a lot of employees have started using tool without much coordination. So I think the first step we see usually is to not to try to block this, but to actually foster this. It's very good that employees are using AI for personal productivity, but I think having some trainings around what the best use cases are, and also how to set some rules and boundaries, especially in terms of data privacy, is something that companies should do. And then once they know a bit how people are using AI within the company, they often move to defining a first strategy, defining some initial use cases, and then that all helps to choose the right tool that they will be using to use generative AI, be it Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT or a composition of different open source tools that they host. If they are more data privacy conscious, there are many different solutions. And then I think the one step that unlocks a lot of further use cases and helps really also put a number on what can be gained using generative AI is being able to use generative AI with the own documents of the company. Because that considerably reduces the hallucinations, gives more context for answers. And if you go to the next slide, I put some examples here. If you're able to use ChatGPT or the equivalent with your own documents, then you can practically activate your company knowledge and start discussing with it. You can, for example, ask, so based on all the contracts you can see in my repositories, can you let me know which ones are expiring in the next 6 months? Are there any clauses that are contradictory with one another? Or if you're an employee, you can start asking about regulations. For example, if you're sick and you want to know when to announce it to the company, or if you become a father and you want to know about what to do in that case, or you can start asking about support cases, pricing based on previous offers. You can start querying margins you did on some projects, or even if you're working with machines or with or on the field, you can start asking questions instead of reading long PDFs of what to do in which case, like, can I reset this machine, or I'm currently installing something, what do you know about this norm, and how should it be concretely used. If you go to the next slide, I think this point unlocks a lot of value, and there are lots of use cases that can be created from there. It's also the first step that companies we saw usually cannot do on their own, because ChatGPT, Copilot is easy. You sign in, you ask questions, you get answers. What the AI cannot do is work with your own data at scale across the whole company. You can upload a few documents, but if you want to really like activate your company knowledge, it's a real project where first you need to define which knowledge should be activated. You realize that it's available in different formats. Sometimes it's available in PDFs, which are not so well readable. You have to do some OCRing. Sometimes you have some wikis that need to be imported. You have some content on emails. You have some content on your ERP, and so getting access to this data is the first step. And then there's a whole science around then how to allow the chatbot to go and retrieve the documents which are relevant for you, which is called chunking, which is if you work with your own documents, the goal is not just that the chatbot gives you this norm or this policy of a few hundred pages, but really that it also highlights like which part of it is currently relevant to the question you asked. And for that, you need to break down the documents in smaller pieces, and it's a lot of practice to come to a result where and it's a lot of trial and error as well to come to a result where that actually works. And we're very fortunate to be working with someone in our team, our technical lead, Fabian Kostadinov, who spent the last 3 years at Swiss Re doing exactly that. And so based on all this, we observed this kind of value creation, but also this difficulty and the many requests we had from SMEs. We decided that we would create an accelerator program to make this knowledge and these steps available at scale. And you have the details exactly here. It starts in September, and in just 3 months, we bring you from not really having started or not having a strategy well defined to having your first chatbot that works with your own documents. But not just that, it's a whole process where we have 2 main tracks, business and tech, where on the business side, we guide you through the definition of a strategy, the definition of use cases, the prioritization, and then the setup of the structures in your organization to manage AI projects. And then on the tech side, we bring you from this initial use case discovery to having a first prototype. And we do it with Digital Switzerland because it's something we do also for Switzerland. I think using AI and generative AI in a way that generates value is something that will unlock a lot of competitiveness for Swiss companies. And so we look forward to working with many of you as part of the program. The program opens for applications now, and we have 5 slots for companies that will start in September. And if you're interested to know more, you can scan this QR code and schedule a call with us, and then we'll tell you everything about the next steps.
Great. Thank you very much, Antoine. Yes, it's great to have heard all of these illustrative presentations and your different hands-on approaches to help SMEs start evaluating AI adoption. I would now like to open the discussion with some of my own questions before opening up to the audience. But of course, feel free at any time to already ask your questions in the chat, so that Linda can also already curate the Q&A slot. So I would like to ask you, Antoine, having heard the idea behind the AI Accelerator program, and you already showing very specifically a use case of how to curate documents for internal company use of all the knowledge. So if an SME is not willing to participate in this AI Accelerator program, for example, how could they still try to actively start or kickstart their AI adoption journey?
I think the AI adoption starts from 2 sides. There's like bottom up and top down. Bottom up, as I described, like I think many people are using AI in the company. So like try identifying them and talking to them, like how are they using AI, especially Gen AI, for which use cases? Is there something to learn that could be spread across the company, that more people could start using these tools and generate value with them? We saw that just having the tools and Copilot in place is one thing, but then actually using it to really create value is something else. And that goes from trainings and efforts and thinking together about how to use it in concrete use cases for the different teams. And then top down, it's really also thinking strategically about business model. We see AI as the continuation of the digitalization journey. And so there are always the same topics, like how can you create more efficiency? How can you develop new products? And is there maybe in your industry something like a paradigm shift where you have to be aware of your business model requiring some attention because new players are coming and may take up some of your market share. So, so yeah, I think doing that is the first step if you want to do it on your own pace.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. Maybe there to Manuel and Primo, you showed the manuals that that you've published in your presentations. Could you maybe tell us about examples of how SMEs might have used these manuals to go from idea to implementation?
You want to go
You
first,
wanna?
Manu?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same. Yeah, I can go first. Thank you. So I think same as I would guess Primo. So we did not come up or provide a step-by-step guide. I don't think that is reasonable or feasible in general, but it's more kind of a practical guide in terms of a light or showing different potential ways how to go forward, basically. And on one hand was, as I said, or as I presented, the use cases give kind of inspiration what can be done by AI. So I think that can give an idea, but of course only the SMEs can judge what is reasonable and feasible for their own enterprise and businesses. And I think there potentially they will need also some support, therefore also external partners to kind of who have more expertise in the field to kind of show the whole bandwidth, what is actually possible, not and what can be implemented within a reasonable time frame and with the costs that can be managed. So I think it's more kind of an inspiration, and then the next steps they will be either be dependent on external partners, or they have to invest and really reflect on what can be done with the data, as Antoine mentioned as well, reflect on their business model, whether there are new opportunities there. And I think so it's not an end-to-end guide that we provide, but more food for thought.
I go next. Thanks a lot, Cecil, for the question, and Manuel for going first. My response is similar, but with flavors. So why have we developed this guide? It was based on learning from the cloud journey. As mentioned before, I was leading the local cloud transformations. I was the program lead for the local cloud data centers that we build up. And there we saw that in the first 1-2 years, it was mainly large companies who looked into the cloud because they had the resources, either manpower resources or the money to actually have other resources looking into it. And SMEs very often didn't know where to start at all. So again, with AI, we saw that many of the SMEs, they were standing in front of a huge mountain and didn't know where would I even start. And that was the idea, that we would give them like a start with some trainings to get the first idea, to get some inspiration. And then also, as Manuel said, we highly recommend that after you have a basic idea, and Antoine has laid that out very nicely, you need a strategy, you need an idea, you need, as we also propose, some potential use cases that can be derived internally in some brainstorming. After you have qualified and then actually also prioritize them, we highly recommend to engage with a partner, because many of the partners have done similar projects. They know the pitfalls, they know how to approach it. This is very often a good first step. We do also see that very often it helps if companies start small. So Copilot, for example, while my role is not to position any Microsoft technology, it's more about itself, but Copilot for many companies is an easy way to get started. There, if I may, I personally am in the belief that Copilot actually can access customer data and can actually also access internal document if it's set up the right way. So that is a way to get started. That is a possibility, but as said, there's many different opportunities. But the important thing is at least to get started, because others are doing it. Also internationally, we see it from Microsoft side. Many countries are betting a lot on AI, and there's a lot of movement. So sooner or later, especially the SMEs that are more internationally oriented, there will be competition from ones who use AI. So we highly recommend that you get started and look into it.
Yeah. Maybe linked to what you also just said of the rapid movements within this landscape. Are you updating your manual regularly, or is there a plan of doing that? Because I assume with this very evolving landscape, there might be a shift in less than a year or two, where SMEs need to maybe shift their focus as well.
Yes, I take the freedom to continue right now and let then Manuel and others talk. But yes, we plan to update that. So it was a first version that we released this like February, and we plan to update it, for example, more around AI agents. We see more and more that agents, especially as I said, in some of the processes, order management, supply management, and so on, are the future. There's been some research or papers or call-outs with regards to so-called frontier firm, where many agents are actually taking a lead. Still, of course, supervised by humans. That's very strongly our core belief that AI shouldn't take over. That's, by the way, why we call it co-pilot and not autopilot or not pilot, but it's a co-pilot, and the human is still in the driver's seat. That's extremely important. But yes, we do plan to regularly update it. That's also why we put it on a web page and not a PDF. We've seen that again in the cloud journey. We did such a guide in a PDF, and there you had many old versions that got downloaded and spread. So it's on a website where we regularly will update in the future.
Yeah, maybe I just add on to it. Similar thought. Yeah, as you mentioned, the development is quick, and there are new use cases coming up. And as I say, it's more of a guidance. So the platform that I mentioned, Cyrop, is as well the idea to kind of continuously add relevant use cases that can be interesting for a large number, and that may be shared publicly as well. So that is a kind of a prerequisite as well to kind of have it on the platform, at least as an idea. But yeah, usually the partners are interested as well to kind of showcase what their experiences are. So therefore, I think that will be continuously further developed, and continuous improvement.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I do think it would be interesting to also hear from you, Antoine, having also very direct contact with SMEs and helping them kickstart their journey of how you see the trends in terms of AI adoption, and maybe also having a bit of a vision for 1 year in advance or 2 years of how this development could change. Are there any insights that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Now, what we see very clearly, and it's also why we put this focus on the accelerator program on the RAG, so the chatbot with the own documents, is that you have this succession of steps that grow more complex, where like every company started using AI with generative AI, and then the first use cases are just like you have the chatbots and you can ask questions with the generic knowledge of the chatbots, and already there you can gain a lot of productivity. Then you can activate your documents with a series of RAGs, and then you get to another level of being able to query them. And then once you have this base, you can start, if you imagine like the box with the LLM and your documents inside, then you can start creating so-called agents. That means you make things come into the box and come out of the box, and then you can create whole workflows which are entirely automated. And I think that's where we're going towards, not just to have humans use chatbots and then get questions that they copy paste somewhere, but to really have a deeper integration of generative AI within the companies, with the purpose to replace some of the workflows we have, all this work of taking elements from one format and putting that into another system that currently doesn't really connect with one another. It's going to be something that will be done by machines.
Great. That yeah, sounds good. Agentic AI is coming. I would actually now like to hand over to you, Linda, and open up the Q&A. I see there's already a few questions in the chat, so keep them coming. Floor is yours, Linda.
Yeah, thank you everyone for this very engaged discussion and your presentations. I will just pick up the first question, and I think you already talked about it a little bit. The question is, do you have concrete examples of how Swiss companies are using AI agents? If you know of any example, of course you can anonymize the case, but maybe to get a bit more of a concrete idea to any of the panelists.
Maybe I could start, if you don't mind, with something that the commercial teams, I'm not on the commercial side, but I know from the commercial teams, they're working on some cases around order and supplier management. So imagine an order comes in, and typically in the past that would land with the PDF in the mailbox, and someone looks at it and then triggers actually the process to have that delivered or sometimes manufactured. And then sometimes there are some parts missing for that order to fulfill. So they would need to contact their supplier, maybe together with some other consolidated orders, and then get the supplies and so on. So this is something where AI agents can not only automate, and we've seen that before AI, let's face it, sometimes there's a tendency to paint everything with AI, which was happened before with digital transformation. So it's not only automating some of that steps, so like automatically extracting information from a PDF and then triggering orders, for example, or supplies with suppliers, but it's actually then also using training. If, for example, a specific spare part is not listed, or if there's a new, let's say, product or a new element which typically was not foreseen, so that the agent knows or was trained what steps to trigger there, maybe to initiate a new inquiry with the supplier, maybe to trigger a specific team within the company. So it depends on the specific use case, but it's just enhancing the automation with also more, let's say, intelligence. If there's unforeseen case, that they would also actually start automating that process. And again, there's still humans in the loop in the end, but it's just simplifying the whole process and saving time and generating higher productivity.
Maybe I can share another example that we worked on recently. We have a collaboration with another company, and together we have what we call the AI Agent Lab, which is a kind of a playground to experiment with AI agents. And we had recently a collaboration with a Swiss hospital group, which was very interesting. We took 3 weeks and used only publicly available plug-and-play tools to show them the potential of AI agents. And we started by defining the main pain point, which was the patient admission process, which is a very long process with lots of actors involved and lots of administration. And they estimated that they spend about 48,000 hours per year of manual work with this process. And then we took that and prototyped the process using agents and plug-and-play tools, and showed them after this period, when the management came and entered the room, we did a kind of a lab demonstration showing how agents could actually do the job that humans are doing today, or the tedious jobs, And we showed them the potential to reduce this from 48,000 hours to 3,000 hours per year. It was a very impressive result. And I think that for now, the way we see the state of the market, it's a lot about defining these visions, like what can agents do using those quick tools, because so much is available out there. And then once you know and understand and you have seen it, then you can define a roadmap for over the next couple of years, try to internalize that and then improve your processes in a data privacy compliant and more like a rigorous way.
Very interesting. Thank you, Antoine, and also Primo, of course. Manuel, do you also have an example you would like to share?
Yeah, I think it goes in a similar direction as well. Yeah, like it's just the processing of supplier bills, basically the individual step, just extracting the main information and then matching it with the different entries in the database, basically, and automizing this whole process, basically in different sub-steps. That's main, with the human in the loop to then checks and cross-checks the entries and suggestions. So
Yeah,
I think it's similar to the others.
Interesting, thank you. And of course, when talking about like gaining or like reducing from 48,000 hours to 3,000, of course, that's a huge incentive, but it comes with costs. There is also a question regarding if you have any or can share any view about the minimal budget requirement to start the AI journey with RAG. And yeah, what would be like kind of an entry solution also for an SME?
I can take the initiative to answer that one because that's exactly the focus of our accelerator program. We looked into how consultants or the industry was pricing RAGs, and very often it's a complex project, and the costs go well above 100,000 per project. We offered the accelerator for 50,000 per seat because the companies are pooled in this effort, and also because we don't deliver the project as such, but it's more like a course where every company sends people who will learn about RAGs and be able to, with our coaching, do their own RAG and also be empowered in the future to develop more RAGs. So that's the number I could cite, like 50,000 for creating your first RAG in a way that works and is Swiss data privacy compliant.
Yeah. Interesting. So you train the people to kind of empower themselves and to be able to continue this in the future. And there was also another question regarding considering data privacy and cost. Maybe this question goes also in direction or to Primo. Considering data privacy and cost, what are your thoughts on SMEs hosting AI models locally versus using cloud solutions?
Right. Thanks a lot for that question. So there are some people who claim that AI is sort of like the killer app of the cloud, not that it kills it, but that it's actually is sort of the final breakthrough of the cloud. And to a certain degree, we've seen that. For example, I can name a very conservative private bank in Geneva who was totally against cloud for given reasons, fair enough. And then they looked into AI. And actually, it triggered exactly the same questions as before, because we provide as Microsoft Cloud solution AI solutions that are definitely based on the cloud. It triggered the same questions, but AI was actually making the difference then that they started to use AI and cloud natively through it because the use case was so compelling. So it is, of course, a balance. Data privacy, for example, there are different, let's say, approaches. So if you use, for example, ChatGPT openly, let's say the consumer version, you have a risk of the data being used to train the model or data flowing to the US, for example, versus if you use in our case, Copilot. If the tenant is set up in Switzerland, which is typically the case, as we have the Swiss data centers, then we give the guarantee also contractually that the data is then actually stored within Switzerland, and that we also do not use this data for training the model, for example. Cost-wise, of course, if you do something on yourself, it typically has a tendency to have a higher cost. So it's something that you need to invest in, talking about the infrastructure and also all the surrounding circumstances. Whereas if you just consume it as a service, it's typically easier. It's typically not such a huge cost. While, of course, there are also subscription monthly fees in the case of Copilot. They're not quite cheap, I must admit, and that adds up as well over time. But again, it's then consumption based and not doesn't come with the huge upfront investment.
Antoine, Manuel, you want to add to that?
Seeing all the questions, I can answer here, but I think there are also a few others that would be interesting to answer.
Exactly, yeah. Just if you want to pick one from the chat you would like to answer directly, I think we have time for one last question before handing back to Cécile.
Sure. I was curious about Dominic's question regarding experience outside of Switzerland, especially with like platforms of like Upwork or Fiverr. And I found it interesting when I think of getting expertise from outside of Switzerland, especially using these platforms. I was using them a lot in the past, having been an entrepreneur and using those skills to build up my business. Currently, I actually stopped because I find that ChatGPT or Copilot or all the other tools I discovered Lovable, for example, recently for building websites, actually a much faster and more reliable way to get to answers. And I think if you're trying to build a RAG, for example, by yourself, it's probably a good way to self-teach you with some of these tools. You have amazing answers and amazing ways to learn also using those direct tools.
Yes, thank you. So, Cécile, shall we hand back to you for your final remarks, or shall we take another last question?
Let's take one last question.
Okay, great. So, another question that I think is quite personal, or like to sum it up, what are the AI tools that you use personally the most? Asking, this is one question someone asks to the panelists out of curiosity.
Can start maybe, although we're maybe a bit special organization, so we're not a producing company or SME. So for us, it's mainly content creation and also kind of summarization of text documents, exploration. Like we have different search engines that we use. So we're working a lot with text and documents. So there we often use people and also ChatGPT and DALL-E and all these tools. And we have a dedicated search engine as well that is kind of fostering the publicly available pool of data. So these are tools that we use, and just gives access to a broader pool of data and to analyze those and also be quicker and more independent to come up with a first result and the first analysis. That's our main benefit. I think it just makes us more productive, but not eliminating the need for kind of expertise, be it internal as well as external, in terms of translation. So you still have to go through the text, for example, before publishing it. So it always needs a cross check still.
For me, I mentioned Lovable before. It was my big breakthrough moment of this year where I really thought like there's something new I need, and I was really blown away. It's a tool where it is so-called vibe coding. So you code, for example, a website, but you don't code yourself. You just describe what you would like to see, and that you get, because your description is also not perfect, you get maybe to 80% of what you wanted, and then you can talk with the tool and adapt. And I found this really fascinating. I first thought it was something where like standard blocks were put together, but it's really coding from scratch and solving problems, and it's like incredible. And otherwise, I have the same use cases as Manuel, especially for personal productivity, working with texts, finding. I usually copy paste entire email threads, and then I get an answer in the same length and tone that is well adapted, or I just put some thoughts quickly together, and then I get someone who really understands me and puts these thoughts into a message that is coherent and well addressed for the person who will receive it.
And finally, on my side, as you may expect, it's Copilot many times a day, embedded into Office. That makes a huge difference for me. So I give you just one concrete case, as we're a bit short on time, within Teams, for example. So as I often have 2 or 3 even meetings running in parallel, when I miss a meeting, very often in the past, I would need to go through a recording, listen to like 45 minutes recording on the back, of course, while doing some other stuff, but sometimes also more actively if it was about something I was responsible. And now I can Copilot, let's do the job. It summarizes automatically the main points. It gives me the very specific moments I was mentioned. I can jump directly to the points where I was mentioned. It gives me the actions. It automatically generates the follow-up tasks out of the meeting, and I can dig deeper. I can ask Copilot then for, like, for example, how was the sentiment towards a specific point in the call? Gives me an idea, and so that's really saving me a lot of pain and time.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for these insights and this also very engaged discussion. Thanks for the questions. And then I hand over for the last minute to Cecile.
Yes, so as we're 1 minute before end, I would just like to take this opportunity to thank you, especially the 3 speakers that took time to share their knowledge with us and answer these very interesting questions from the audience. Also, thank you to the audience for your engagement and for spending this hour with us on this very important topic. And I hope these insights helped you and reach out to the 3 panelists. If you have further questions, reach out to us if you have further questions on Digital Switzerland. And we look forward to the next community talks on related topics. So thank you very much and have a great afternoon and rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.